Okay, good. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to another Dot Talks webinar series brought to you by Tetso College. Our Dot Talks webinars initially began with a weekly newspaper column for those of you who are tuning in for the first time. And it's still being published weekly in the Morong Express. And from there, we have now moved on to a full-fledged website, YouTube channel, and are on various social media platforms. In this process, we've now moved on to live sessions and webinars with different people ranging from theologians, academicians, professionals, and even students to share their opinions on different issues and trends that are affecting the world. Now, with the pandemic going on, we have increased the number of webinars that we've been conducting, and today we have Jason Wong, all the way from New York City, with us today. So thank you so much for being here with us, Jason.
Be here, Kolu. Thanks for having me.
Great, yeah. So, Jason, before I hand over the time, I just want to add a disclaimer that where our institution is concerned, and for everybody here, the exact position on any matter that is shared in our platform is neutral. The institution doesn't really take a side, but we're providing a platform for discussion. I'm just mentioning this because when we posted this invitation on social media, we received some quite surprising reactions. And because of that, it made us realize that some topics have different ways of affecting people, and at the same time, so please remember, first, Jason, don't be too nervous about this. There are, at the same time, we have it's nice to know that we have a certain number of people following this thread quite closely. But I would also like to remind all our attendees that our speaker will be speaking first. We'll give him some time, after which we'll provide a question and answer round during which you can either type your questions in the chat box or you can unmute your mic later when permission is given. So to jump right in, maybe we could start with a little introduction. I'd like you to introduce yourself, Jason, after which go ahead and take the time. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I'm Jason Wong. I'm born and raised in New York City. Child of immigrant parents. My mother is from Manila, Philippines. My dad is from Hong Kong. They came here in their 20s. So when you're a child of immigrants in New York City, you do something called cultural straddling. So you're firstborn American in New York. You have to share your culture, keep one foot in one culture and another foot in American culture, and try and learn how to adjust and be an American, because you don't have the experience coming from your parents. They just got here. Within 3 years of them being here, my sister was born. 2 years after that, I was born, and I was brought up as with other Filipino and Chinese immigrant families, and that's the American story. We are a land of immigrants, and I'm pretty familiar with the life of my family in Asia and my family here.
Okay.
So yeah, here I am.
Thanks, Jason. Go ahead, then. So let's hear what you have to say. Yeah.
Sure. So to give you a little background of where I come from as being involved in social causes. Growing up in New York, it's a very diverse place, and it's actually considered fairly socially acceptable compared to other parts of America. You still are subject to a lot of curiosities about who you are. I look different growing up to a lot of my my classmates. I went to a Catholic school in Queens, and I was one of only 3 Asians in the school: a Korean, a Chinese, and me. 2 Indian students, and the rest were white. And you learn at an early age that kids are curious. Some can be mean. And I have 2 daughters of my own, and ever since they were young, I told them people are going to ask you questions about you, even if they're this is a predominantly white school wherever we end up going. And um, I had been called chink, gook, all of the names that go along with it. And I learned how to fight it. I learned how to discuss it with people and say that's not nice. But most importantly is as I got older, as I moved on towards high school, I was like, this isn't right. So high school came along, and I was still, subject to being a minority in a predominantly white school. But there were more Asians, more people that looked like me, more people that felt like me. I ended up becoming vice president of the United Students of the Continent Asia, president of the Philippines Cultural Club. I went on to college and took a direct interest in Asian American awareness, trying to educate groups on Filipino culture and Chinese culture. Along these lines, I find myself at the battle lines educating people with my Black and Hispanic friends. So I'm pretty subject to alliances. I ended up becoming an alliance manager between all the minority fraternities and sororities when I was in college, and we realized we had a common bond trying to keep the peace. And we've all shared stories of some form of racial attack, a slur, a joke, you know? And here I am with two teenage daughters, and I realized I want to set a positive role model and share my stories with them. They're another generation, so 40 years have passed, and they're going to have their own trials and tribulations. Hopefully, it's a better world, but it's not. If anything, I've learned it's not perfect. And as much as we'd like people to be wholeheartedly accepting of each other, there's still problems in this world with people not accepting that people feeling that they're better than other people because of how they look, what color their skin are, what background they are. And I took a particular interest in the Black Lives Matter movement. Predominantly, a lot of things were happening in New York that led to the BLM movement in 2012, when it actually began. And here we are now having a conversation with Nagaland. And I'm pretty excited to get right into that. How's that sound?
Great, great. Thanks for the introduction, Jason. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess you might have already have something prepared, but just before that, I was just wondering. There's so many different social causes and other things. Why BLM?
Why BLM? Okay, so I'm involved in many other causes.
Why this money? Yeah.
Why? I mean, okay.
Mm.
It starts from conversations with my cousins in the Philippines, and I have an uncle. Right, I post things on my social media, on my Facebook, and in my Instagram, as many people do, and share their feelings on political opinions, as well as sharing pictures of your family and social causes. Social engagements. And then I get questioned like, "Why are you supporting this racist movement?" And I found myself having conversations with my family of explaining what's going on in the world and what news they're seeing didn't seem accurate. I would have them send me links of what they're seeing, and they're talking to me about, why are you joining the riots? And I'm like, I haven't been at a riot. I've been at many, many protests. Protesters are protesting. Rioters, well, they're rioting. Looters, they're looting. That's not the base of what's happening. There's many people peacefully protesting, or maybe not even peacefully. There's a civil unrest, a discomfort with people don't like when the people are trying to oppress are trying to come back up. Civil rights has been a major part of American history, and what I know is Asian history, Black history is Black American history, Asian American history are fairly different from white America history. And what you see in the textbooks, a lot of times what you see in the news, a lot of it's based on white American history. And don't get me wrong, I love this country. I have friends of all races. I'm a big supporter of all that's make this country great, but a lot of what makes this country great is free speech. And we're supposed to, people under the, the guise that we have equal rights and equal opportunity, when in fact it's really it's just not true. It's much harder for certain groups and ethnic groups to succeed in this country, and some do, many do. My family did a lot of struggle and hard work, but definitely succumb some challenges compared to my white friends. And a lot of white friends and people in America have come to acknowledge that that is true. Some have had to look deep inside themselves and go, wow, historically we have oppressed a lot of the minorities in this country. It really isn't fair. And then there's others who would lead you to believe that it's been fair this whole time. And if that's anything BLM is trying to do is sure that it isn't fair. And they're trying to say that the movement started because Black people were being killed, some on TV, even some on the internet, and the people who were officers or the vigilantes that were killing them were not being prosecuted. Some weren't even being arrested until they were brought in front of they were brought up because it was videos of them were online doing that, doing awful things. So why BLM? It led to I've got a racist uncle in the Philippines. I was saying that out there. I'm like, oh, you have a racist family member? Yeah, it stems from his exposure to what he believes, an implicit bias, an assumption that he goes, he said to me, Jason, Black people are dirty, they're oversexed, and I was like, you're just so wrong in even making that general assumption on everybody. I mean, my racist uncle also hates Japanese people because they took over the Philippines. I have family in Hong Kong who have issues with other Asian cultures. Everyone will have an issue with something when they experience something in their lifetime, especially in their past. It's when they start telling it to the generations below them to affect them that these, things that the Japanese are still evil, or the Blacks are evil, without having any exposure to anything, that we need to have more conversations, especially in an opportunity to speak to a group in another country is a major part of what the Black Lives Matter movement is, and I consider myself an ally. How's that?
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jason.
Sure.
Well, while we're talking about this, also I was also wanted to go into the protest part of it. So you have since we know each other, I've seen pictures of you, right
Sure.
out there in the front line, protesting. I mean, we're only reading this stuff now. I was just wondering about you, like how, when did you go for your first protest? Have you experienced anything violent? Were you scared? Just your personal experiences protesting in a movement like this. I think
Sure.
protesting in Nagaland is still getting started. Things happening. That I've only attended one protest in my life. I think that was about illegal taxation a couple of years ago once.
Okay.
But that was quite different. I just wanted to know, like, your experiences. When did you first start doing that, and are you going to be going for more protests?
I will. Cool. I'm going to say, let's keep this in the interview format. I'm going to bypass the video. I like this dialogue better. So I've been protesting.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I like this. I like this format better. And I hope the rest of the class here likes it too. I've, like I said, since grade school, I've been involved in getting the word out on anything that we felt, we learned in grade school, high school, college, that about the civil rights movements and people protesting and doing sit-ins and die-ins, and doing acts of disobedience, but non-violently, to get a message across, to get a point across. Only until the late 70s, where Blacks felt comfortable able to vote. Women only started being able to vote in the 60s. That's not that long ago. That is my parents' age, which means that I have Black friends, especially, whose parents weren't able to get into university because that wasn't an option in Alabama. That wasn't an option in Texas. and then they're being told that they've had the equal opportunities as their white counterparts, and it's just not true. Like there's so so as Americans, you're taught to stand up for what you believe in, because people throughout the history of this country have made changes to it through acts of protest, through acts of disobedience. Sometimes that leads to riots. Sometimes the upper forces butt heads with the people that are trying to they're trying to get their point across, and people are trying to control other people. And I look at India, and I look at India as a whole first, and I look at Gandhi, peaceful protester right there. I mean, there's this in regards to the control of the Sultan, the British. That's a prime example of protest. That's a prime example of standing up to what he and his followers believed. I look at Nagaland. Fighting against internment by India itself, trying to take over your lands. There were moments of protest in the 50s, 40s and 50s, if I believe I got my history correct, where the Naga people stood up against Indian internment. And it started with peaceful protest. Don't come here. Don't be here. This is how we're going to rule. And then you guys had some fighting. There was some fighting. People took up guns. Tribes were formed. I did a little history. So I'm familiar. Every land has had some form of change where people didn't feel they were being treated right, and they stand up for themselves. So I took a particular interest in Black Lives Matter because it's so unfair. And when you can really see what's it on the forefront, like here in New York, and then you're watching it in national sports. It's almost like they don't want anybody to protest. We have this athlete here, Colin Kaepernick, right? That's when it really started to get more national attention. Outside of Twitter, we had a sports athlete here take a knee during the national anthem, and he was silently trying to bring attention to this matter of police brutality against blacks. He didn't go on a giant podium. He didn't get a microphone and do a speech at a monument like Martin Luther King. Just took a knee, and he was torn apart for it. National anthem's a song. It's a song. You know, I know I have friends that are in the military that fought in wars. They fought in Afghanistan, and they pride themselves on fighting for the people to have the freedom of speech. And that was his freedom of speech, because he believed that he needed to bring people's attention. Why is he doing that? So that people can answer, he's doing that because of police brutality. Two children were recently killed by police, and no, they're not being prosecuted in any way. So he just wants to bring attention to it. And then I read the news. I heard Fox News and a lot of other right-wing media saying that he was protesting the veterans, and he was protesting America itself. He was protesting the heroes, and it just wasn't true. None of it was true. Even the suggestion that he take a knee during the national anthem was made from a Marine who said, "This is something we do. We'll take a knee when we don't believe in something." And he lost his job. LeBron James, you guys might know basketball players, wearing an "I Can't Breathe" shirt. Kobe Bryant, tragically died, wearing an "I Can't Breathe" shirt. Another silent protest. They were told by the government the current presidential administration to just shut up and dribble. That's a great insult. These guys are trying to make to stand their ground for equality for their ethnic group, and I could understand it. And it's not that hard. It wasn't that hard for me to make that transition, because I just put my head under the officer's knee. I can see my own child under there, and I would do anything. I would do anything and everything possible to make sure that justice was achieved. Some way, somehow. I'll do it as peacefully as I can and go up to the front, but sometimes the front lines don't let you, and you get into a scuffle with the police and the government. So yes, it's easy to transition to Black Lives Matter when you live in a country where everyone looks different, where the majority is white, but everyone looks different. So I know it was challenging for me to explain that to my family in Hong Kong, where they all look very similar, they all same, and my family in the Philippines are like, well, I'm like, you have to make pretend that there's only a few of you, and no one seems to care about you. There's a feeling that you get because your people are dying, and no one's being held accountable. So I'm here. No, right on. So I mean, it's interesting. The times are interesting, right? And I think you need to get a little history on the Black Lives Matter movement to really understand it. I know I was talking about. I originally titled this the history of systemic oppression, racism, but that's very challenging to pull off in 30 minutes. Almost.
Okay.
Very,
so
yeah, go ahead.
Maybe just for our audience, I mean, in brief, could you just define systematic racism?
Systemic racism, systemic oppression? Sure.
Yeah.
It's any system developed that's been put in place to keep one race or multiple race, one race dominant over multiple races. So systemic, meaning the whole system. America was built on the backs of slaves, whether it be Asian slaves, Indian slaves, Mexican slaves. Acknowledging that is not wrong. Understanding that Europeans came here and took land from Native Americans, and Christopher Columbus came here thinking this was India and called them Indians, and then they raped and pillaged the lands, and then built the land here for themselves for many years, led to systems that always kept them on the forefront and not necessarily the people that they took the land from. Later on, they brought people over from Africa, and people like to use the word. And I'll give you a good example of systemic oppression. Our textbooks used to say that the Europeans had brought slaves here from Africa, but the reality of it all is it should be worded that they brought mothers, fathers, daughters, doctors, business owners here and turned them into slaves in America. There's the wording is key in communicating equally and fairly, so people understand and have a compassion for what took place. And I'm not asking, people aren't asking for change. They're just meaning, I mean, for them to, take the, to absolve them for that. It happened. Now we need to do something about it to balance it out. And a lot of people are very resistant to that. I'm sorry, I lost your question. So what is systemic oppression? Systemic oppression, because of that, really affects the entire system, schooling systems, banking system, loans, education, access to the wealth, access to the loans. I don't know. I sent the video to you guys. I don't know if they were forwarded to your classmates, but it puts a parallel between a white family and a black family, and that are of the same age, that go to school together, and they grow up together, but one has way more privilege than the other. And a lot of that stems from the way that the systems are developed or were developed in this country and how they affect them now. Police reform is just one thing, one part of the world that Black Lives Matter is trying to change, to adjust. But education reform, distribution of wealth, ability to get loans, all fall under areas that should be analyzed to provide more equality, and hopefully we get there.
All right. Thank you, Jason. Thank you.
Sure.
So, just a reminder to everyone online right now that if you do have a question, you can type your question in the chat box, and we would probably query our speaker. And at the same time, we will probably give some time later for you to go ahead and ask your questions as well. So keep those questions ready. Okay, so Jason, actually, there was one.
Ooh, very nice.
Yeah, so there was
Sorry,
one
I see some of the
question which,
questions popping up.
yeah, yeah, there might be more coming. So,
Mm.
Hemans, I had one question over here. I'm just gonna take her question right now, and that is, how would you respond to people that find the BLM offensive with the
Mm.
counter view that all lives matter?
Very good. So you've um, you've got to take out the words all lives. You've got to look at the title of Black Lives Matter as just a sentence. Doesn't mean Black Lives Matter are more superior. It doesn't mean that Black Lives Matter are 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 more important than anybody's else. It just says Black Lives Matter. Black lives want to matter. There's a feeling that they don't matter in this country, and that is appalling. People like to focus on the name because honestly, the branding wasn't meant to go that way. The branding wasn't that is in the name um, causes some causes confusion, and it gives the opposition an opportunity to say, well, all lives matter, blue lives matter, Asian lives matter. It's way beyond just 3 words of Black Lives Matter. And regardless, if all lives matter, Black lives have to matter too. And right now, they don't feel like they do. Um, it's important that the understanding of, and I'm going to send a video to you guys that I hope you all watch to give you a really good breakdown of where the Black Lives Matter movement started in 2012. A boy named Trayvon, and I should break it down for you now so you can understand what happened. The lady who started the movement, Garza, she wrote on her Facebook after a boy was killed, Trayvon Martin, and um, the vigilante who killed him, George Zimmerman, was got off, was guilty. He was arrested only several months later because people were protesting that this was ridiculous. He didn't have a gun. Why can a civilian just kill somebody because they think he looked suspicious? And then she wrote on her Facebook, "Black people, I love you. I love us. Our lives matter. Black lives matter." Her friend then, Patrice Cullors, shared the final 3 words as a hashtag on Twitter. And on Twitter, it just said hashtag Black Lives Matter. So it just came from a sentence, right? Someone wrote a sentence and then someone hashtagged it Black Lives Matter. And then on the 7th of March in 2013, Black Lives Matter popped all over Twitter. Writers and immigrant activists, Opal Tometi offered to build social media platforms for it where activists could connect with one another. It's called the Black Lives Matter Global Exchange. So it's people, even Asians, Indians, anyone who's having racial issues could go onto that platform to discuss, hey, this isn't fair. It gave a channel for people to communicate, but the name of it became Black Lives Matter because she had written a Facebook post and a friend had hashtagged it Black Lives Matter, and it exploded. So it's just a sentence, but really it could say Black lives are being fairly untreated in America. Our people are being killed in the streets, and no one is being held accountable. It seems. Please help us. That's what it could say, but it just says Black Lives Matter, and people pick on it. They go, well, all lives matter. All right, fine, great. All lives matter. Well, Black lives matter too, and Black lives need to matter in order for all lives to matter, and it sure doesn't seem like it does in this country. And a lot of it stems from existing police brutality. So that's how I respond to all lives matter. Does that cover that?
Okay, so
yeah.
I just wanted your opinion on this because I heard one response to this, and I want to know how correct it is. But one response to this answer about all lives matter is that when you're answering the question all lives matter, it's like asking, okay, if you have, let's say, brain cancer, and then you have, it's like saying brain cancer matters, and then all of a sudden then saying breast cancer also, answering it that, then why not breast cancer or something
Sure.
like that.
Well, why not breast cancer? Right. They give the story of the roof on fire. Are you familiar with that? If my house is on fire, the fire department shows up. I'm like, please hose my roof down. It's on fire. What about all the other roofs? All the other roofs, My house matters. All the other roofs matter. Yeah, but mine's the only roof on fire. Like there's this thing happening in this world that it's yes, all the roofs in this neighborhood matter, but my roof's on fire. So my house matters. Black Lives Matter. I Yes, it's the comparison. You can compare like, oh, I have a stomach problem, fix my stomach. I've got stomach ache, but well, my stomach matters. Well, your heart matters. All your organs matter. Well, you got to give your attention to what's ailing. So to me, it's just semantics and words. Black Lives Matter is the name of it's the name of the movement, but it's not the entirety of what it's all about. It's just a name.
Yeah. Okay, so you're not. It's not saying that other lives don't matter, right? Is what you're
No,
trying to say.
not
Yeah,
at
yeah.
all. It's not saying one's better than the other. It's not saying anything like that. Black Lives Matter just happens to be the last three words of a sentence that was written that became a movement. It's
I
the
see.
title to a movement, but people like to pick at it as a thing, and it really stems from a lot of people getting killed and no one being held accountable for those killings. They're all black and they're all unarmed. Some were choked, some were shot, and I'm glad I'm not showing you the videos right here because people would think it's propagandish in some ways, but there's a real reason why these videos affect people. It's important that I point this out. I made my wife and my kids, right? They hear Black Lives Matter. They know I'm very passionate about it. They understand that we're trying to even things out, but they didn't watch the video of George Floyd being killed. They didn't watch Philando Castile. They didn't watch Eric Garner because it's uncomfortable to watch a person die on. It's awful, right? But if you do, you really can feel where the pain comes from of why this movement is happening. People want to make it a moment too, and I'm telling you right now, it's not a moment. It's a movement, and we're living in the times of a revolution. If you wanted to know where you had been during the Holocaust, or you would have been during the civil rights movement, this is what you're doing now is probably where you would have been. And right now we have a front row seat to the revolution. And I got to say, I'm really proud of the kids that are out there on the street trying to get their voice heard. It's really special times. And I don't think it would have been happening if we weren't in the middle of a pandemic. Yeah.
Thanks, Jason. So, I'm
Sure.
gonna go to another audience question here. Teja Nuzo, are you here? Do you want to unmute your mic and ask this question directly? You seem to have multiple questions. Or do you want me to read it out?
I see questions.
Hello.
Do I support
Yeah.
defunding the police?
Yeah, so, okay, that's Teja. He's going to be asking. Yeah, Teja, go ahead. Why don't you ask the question?
Yeah, hello. So regarding the what do you call systemic racism?
Sure.
Just recently, AG William Barr, he said that the law enforcement system in America is not systematically racist.
Yep.
Okay. And the other one is BLM founder Patrice
Colors.
BLM founder, Black
Yep,
Lives
yep.
Matter founder.
Yes.
Patrice Cullors, she said the goal of BLM is to remove President Trump from the office. So my question is, how do you address the BLM movement going political?
Okay, very good, very good. Great question. I'll handle that in two parts. AG William Barr saying that law enforcement is not systemically racist. I do a lot of research on who speaks. I'm careful about believing all politicians. Attorney General William Barr and has, in my eyes, done some pretty unethical decision making, and that to me, him saying the law enforcement is not systemically racist is just untrue. I'd like him to break down the history of the forming of the police and actually discuss people getting killed and people not being held accountable. They have a qualified immunity is a written doctrine here that essentially protects law enforcement from suffering any consequences in this particular, in a situation where they kill somebody, whether it be by accident or on purpose. And William Barr is a big defender of that. So we're trying to change that. In relay to your second question about Patrice Cullors saying, like to remove Trump from office, well, that tends to be where we are right now. The movement does not align with the policies of the current presidential administration, and the movement is in direct relation to what systems are in place. Understanding that Black Lives Movement was in effect while Trump was in office. Knowing that Obama made some efforts to at least talk to the Black Lives Matter people. He negotiated that they would take to not focus so much on riot gear, to remove militarized weapons from the police, to ban chokeholds. These were conversations that were happening in the 2016 prior to the election. All of those systems that I just mentioned, those three that were put into place, were overturned by Trump's administration. And he's been very opposed to what the changes they're trying to make. And so, yeah, BLM's movement now is to get Trump out of office. Democratic Party's role right now is to get Trump out of office. I'm not a big fan. So I'm doing my part to get him out of office. But I'd like to, I'm fiscally conservative. I'm socially liberal. I float a fine line in the middle. I try and find ground on both sides. I try and lose news on both sides. But that's my thoughts on BLM trying to get Trump out of office. He's done enough that's against the BLM movement that they'll put up their fight. I'm being careful with my words there.
Thanks, Jason. There was another part which he had typed, and he is asking. So Teja is asking also, do you support defunding the police?
Oh, okay. So Teja, before we even get into do I support defunding the police, I would love to hear what you mean by defunding the police. What does that mean to you? Because also, once again, they're just the name of a movement. Black Lives Matter, defunding the police, it's a title. What does defunding the police mean to you? If you don't mind answering that, and then I can address it more directly.
Okay. So a lot of politicians, for example, Ilhan Omar, she wanted to abolish the police in Minneapolis. So she's going for the extreme step of abolishing the police. So what's the other alternative? You know, like who will look after the law enforcement?
Okay, good question. Yeah. So very good. Understanding that defunding the police does not mean abolishing the police. I've lived in this country for 44 years. I've watched arts education get defunded. I've watched education get defunded. I've seen the arts program defunded. I've seen social causes get defunded. Someone says defund the police, and it's like no one's trying to it does not mean to remove police forces or law enforcement. Defunding the police is a redistribution of finances to go to better causes, to better social programs and communities that might better serve the crime that could be happening or wouldn't be happening if it wasn't so populated police looking for trouble. I've personally been stopped and frisked in New York City subways. I've had to put my hands against a wall because I was wearing a hoodie in college. I work in the restaurant business. I get home at midnight. I asked the officer, "Why are you searching me?" He said, "You look suspicious." I was like, "Go for it." Comfortably. But so uncomfortable because that's the impression you need to give off. I've been pulled over. I was driving a car. My college roommate, his name was Daoud Walker, black gentleman sitting in the shotgun. We drove past the police. I saw the red lights click on. They put their flashlight on us. Why are you pulling me off? You look suspicious. Okay. And then he asked my black friend to get out of the car. And I was like, I'm the one driving. What did we do? We did nothing. We did nothing. But those acts, because they're just a color, is actually not it's not a good practice. It really can really break down a person's spirit and all the people around them. So defunding the police becomes a message of, okay, let's redistribute the funds that are currently giving to the police officers. How about we take the money we're putting into assault rifles or riot gear, and we put them into more education for the officers. Right now, it's a 6-month to a year training program to be a law officer, but it's an 8-year training program to be a lawyer. Your college graduation is not even a requirement to be a police officer. Let's defund the police and put that money into making education a major part of what it takes to be a law enforcement officer. Defunding the police is not about removing the police law enforcement. It's about taking the funds, which is a lot of funds, and redistributing them to other places in need. A lot of them having to do with social awareness, community projects, education, cultural awareness, social sensitivity, de-escalation techniques. That is what defunding the police is. And you really shouldn't believe everything you read without checking out the sources of where they come from. The defund the police movement is a direct result of this qualified immunity. Defunding the police also includes removing that stigma, removing that written doctrine saying that they cannot be punished for certain crimes that other people would be punished for. That's my answer to defund the police. It's not about abolishing police force. Know that. It sounds like it though. Also, not the best branding. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to go on to another question here.
Sure.
Anjan, if you dare, would you like to ask your question? You can unmute your mic and go ahead.
My internet connectivity is not that great, so
Okay.
let me know if my voice isn't clear.
Okay.
So in India, this Black Lives Movement, when it started, Indians started to write in support of this movement. When they did that, though, there was a lot of protest against these Indians who wrote in support of this BLM movement, saying that domestic issues are still there, so let these issues be addressed first, before you go and support a movement which is happening in another country. Since you are in the US and actively involved in the BLM movement, okay, I wanted to get your perspective on this. Do you think that this protest should be very much centralized and located in the US alone, or should countries, resolve their domestic issues before they come and support this movement, even from their own home countries?
Fantastic question, Anjan. Okay, so we're living in a very particular special time. I don't believe to be here and watch the streets of America, New York, be painted with large letters of Black Lives Matter to bring awareness to a program, and now seeing protests and demonstrations going on in India, Netherlands, France, all over the world. People are protesting and standing in alliance with what we've got going on in America. But there's definitely, if there's anything I learned, there's a major misunderstanding. Not everyone fully aware of where that started and what that comes from. This is a movement that's been going on for 7 years now. So people jumping into it in India, and I'm going to go with most of the protests that I'm seeing in other countries are in response to their own country's police brutality, whether it be for whatever reason it may be stemming from, whether it be racial, religious, Muslim versus Hindu. There's just, everyone's got their reasons for fighting the causes they're standing for. Black Lives Matter specifically, what is focused on trying to fix the police brutality against blacks in America. However, that's affecting in India, it could turn into another name. What exactly do you find that the people in India are fighting for when they use the hashtag Black Lives Matter? That's what I'm really curious about. Like, what do they foresee? What are they fighting for? What are the Indians fighting for when they're protesting in support of BLM? Now I'm starting a dialogue.
It's mainly, yeah, it's just mainly we support the movement in the U.S. and then hashtag Black Lives Matter, or we support this movement. So it's basically just that. There's no such specific angle that Indians have taken, at least as far as I've gone through the tweets and the reports. I don't think there's a specific angle that they're taking, or are they questioning the police brutality. That has not been done specifically, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody did their homework in those groups. If I mean, I haven't looked into who has started any of the international recognition. I just happen to, and I happen to really believe that if there's anything positive that has come out of us all being in lockdown, is that it's this kind of action in the streets. If it wasn't for the pandemic, wouldn't be happening. Living in America, we got 120,000 people dead, 60 million people unemployed. People don't have anywhere to go on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. There's no sports to distract you. There's nothing. And that's not just here, it's everywhere. So people have taken to the streets and followed the example of this movement, which was interrupted by our normal daily American distractions. Now we're in a world where people are fed up. Yeah, they've been home. We've been home. We've been home just like you guys, social distancing, wearing our masks. And then we watched a police officer put his knee on George Floyd's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. We watched the guy die while 3 officers kneeled on top of him, and another officer watched over the crowd. And it took 6 days before those guys were in jail, or at least, anyone told them they did anything wrong. And that it's the one that broke, the camel's back. People are on the street saying this isn't just about George Floyd. It's true. It's not. This has been going on for a very long time. George Floyd was the, what's the saying? The straw that broke the camel's back. The kind of like the last straw. And you know what? No one's distracted. And there's nothing to confuse anybody right now. They saw it with their own eyes. They knew it was wrong. And now they're in the streets protesting about it. And now people in France, people in India have time. Maybe they'll take the time to really learn where it all came from. You guys are here now. We're talking about it. It's a wonderful thing.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Anjan,
Sure.
for your question. Okay, so just coming closer home, I was just wondering, what do your friends and family feel about you being so actively involved? Are they encouraging you, or are they, what do they feel? How have you been handling that? Their reaction?
Oh, very well. No problem. If you know me, you know me. I'm for equal rights. I'm pro feminism. I'm attracted to people that are trying to do better in the world and support others in the world, regardless of your religion, race, creed, gay lesson, whatever you are. People don't have to be mean or cruel about it. They don't need to oppress you. You shouldn't have to oppress or step on anybody to succeed. Kind of mentality. The better we can do as a unit, as a whole. And I'm not naive. I understand the worst. I'm a capitalist. I believe I will buy something for $1 and sell it for $5. I'm also very involved in business, but I don't do any. My race. We all have. I reflect daily on my own internal struggles, any guilt or racism that might be inherent in me that I had when I grew up, and I be aware of it in my life when I make decisions, when I see others making decisions, and when I educate my kids. The reality of it all is my family views what I do, and they're supportive. At least most of them are that are here. I do have a lot of black, white, gay, Indian, Asian friends, and we're all collectively trying to make what we believe make an improvement in this country. But most importantly, I can block everybody else out and know that I'm setting a good example for my children. And they're, in the end, all that really matter, as far as my reputation goes and my example goes. I hope one day they stand up for what they believe in too, and support their friends when they do what they, are trying to get
Oh,
across in this world.
great. Thanks, Jason. Hey, I was just wondering if there's anybody else who might have questions, because we're nearing the end of our time. Actually, we've got about 5 minutes. Dr. Remy had one
Yeah,
comment.
I got one
Yeah,
last.
Asia,
go ahead.
Hello, hi. So I've got one
Sure.
last question from my side. A lot of people in the movement, a lot of the BLM leaders, they're saying that America is racist, and it was racist from the start, from the beginning. 1776, from there.
Yes.
So my question is, would you say America in general is a racist country? And if yes, how do you, square that with Obama being elected in 2008, and after 4 years he was re-elected in 2012?
Oh, fantastic! That wasn't easy, man. That wasn't easy. Him getting elected, coming from Chicago, an already very black place, his message was very positive. Those were some good times in this country. They really were. So yes, we had a black president that no doubt had plenty of struggle and fight against him, to pass certain laws and certain movements to fight systemic racism. Expecting the first black president to try and fix 400 years of oppression, 400 years plus of oppression, is just not realistic. It's a good starting point for a movement, and I'm awfully happy with the 8 years and some of the changes he was able to make to take place. In response to, is America a racist country? I'm going to say we're as racist as any other country. I'm going to say, in some ways, we're less racist than other countries because we do have a lot of races here. I don't know any country that wouldn't have some form of racism. Some cultures steer away from it and they use it through religion. But in this country, there's just so many people, and so many viewpoints. But only in the last 60 to 80 years have white families been able to see black families or white or women even vote, or to get full-on educations, and they're pretty upset about it. There was definitely the racial tensions about it, about change in this world is very hard for some people. For some racists, it's very hard for them to go, oh, okay, this might be all right. This is I can make it in this world even if my colleague over here is Chinese. I'll tell you this. I've been fighting causes my whole life, and when I used to be chair for the Chinese Cultural Club, we always talked about when will we get our first Asian president. Part of, I feel like, my fight from then on has always been to see that. I'd love to see that. That would be amazing, and yet we would still have plenty of racial issues in this country, at least in my lifetime. I'm really looking forward to hopefully many years from now where we don't have racial tensions like this, and we can judge people by other things besides their race. Hopefully their intelligence, and people get the opportunities to go to universities, just like you guys, and grow on to fulfill your needs. Your generation right here, I mean, this 20 to 30-year-old group is really what's moving the world now. I kind of can put my hands back and sit in the back seat a little bit and watch this millennials do their thing and set a great example for the Generation Z. So I think we're as racist as anybody else. We're specifically in this country struggling with black on white racism. We have an administration that doesn't you know, that doesn't frown upon this kind of tension. His supporters tend to Trump supporters are not for racial mixing. So trying to make a change.
All right. So, Jason, we have come to the end of our time. Is there a contact or something that you might want to share, maybe
Listen,
in the chat, in case they have further questions?
I will. I made a presentation for you guys that I'm still going to send your way. I'm going to send several links on how you can ally yourselves to the Black Lives Movement if you so choose. But please take the time to, you know, watch some videos, make your own decisions, try and look at both sides, try and understand. And I appreciate this. You're talking to an American about an American thing. If you have any other American friends and family, talk to them too. If you find somebody that has an opposing viewpoint, definitely talk to that person. That's the people you want to talk to try and to get a dialogue going on, to try and educate somebody on something that they may not have heard or convince them. I'd love a convincing argument to hear that the police force is just fine, but I haven't heard one. So here I am, trying to learn some more. I recommend you do the same. Everybody, all ages. I'll send some links to you, and then hopefully you can share it to everyone who participated today.
All right. Hey, one question just popped up right now. I was wondering if you have time to take that, Jason. It's from Daria Mehta. There are many black leaders in America who does not support BLM. What do you say about that? Is BLM forcefully trying to include those blacks?
Sure. There are some black leaders that don't support BLM. Is that the question here? Maybe there's been a backlash. Did someone type that somewhere? Oh,
yeah,
next I see it. Many black leaders in America. Yes. Oh, Daria. Yes. There are some black leaders that do not support BLM. They are definitely the minority. If you should try listening to, like I said, the other side, those black leaders that do support BLM, and then if you were to count them over the ones who don't support it, you're going to find a staggering difference. I got this argument from my my racist uncle in the Philippines, and he's like, "Hey, the BLM guys, I see some black guys supporting this. How do you feel about that?" Well, maybe you should listen to some other educated black people and people in politics and balance out, decide which side you think is right. But you got to make sure you listen to the other side too. Just because you're seeing someone black high in politics doesn't solve the world's, doesn't mean everything's fixed. We wouldn't be having so many people out in the streets if it were. And you know, some medias will tell you, well, they had a black president, then that fixes everything. Nah, statues are being torn down right now. Symbols of racism to other people that make them uncomfortable are being removed. And I know it's causing major discomfort. So, like I said, continue to educate yourself. These politicians, they're politicians. This movement is being done by the people in the street, and it's really an amazing time to be alive. We're all part of a revolution here right now. There's opportunity for people to pick which side they want to represent and stand for, but the best thing I think people can do is listen to the other side and see maybe they can work together and figure out something that's gonna make us all be well. Sure, go ahead, Kola.
So. Yeah, so we have come to, you know, there was just the second part of the question is BLM forcefully trying to include blacks who do not feel oppressed or victimized. What's your
forcefully
opinion?
Trying to include those blacks, forcibly trying to include blacks who do not feel oppressed or victimized. Oh, okay. So you're under the impression that you're saying BLM is forcing blacks who don't feel victimized to feel victimized? Is that how I'm reading that? Include those blacks who do not feel oppressed.
So what's your opinion on that?
I'm not being forced to do a thing. No one's being forced. So I have black friends that are very successful, multi-million-dollar men that that have thrived in this country, right? They took big chances, they took risks, and they are also in line with the BLM movement. I personally don't have anyone in my social circle that is not in line with the BLM movement. I have no people who are poor and struggling in the restaurant industry, so I know a lot of immigrants. I know I don't have anyone in my personal social circle. So I know politicians that are out there that are against it. But here's an important key note that you guys got to understand. You don't need to be white to succumb to a message of white supremacy. A lot of blacks and a lot of Asians succeed very well in this country through with the systemic racism. They know how to thrive in there. They know if their white brothers and sisters make money, they're going to make that money. And so this kind of movement jeopardizes that for them. And some have changed their mind. In fact, I know many who have. Some have not and stand in opposition. Does that make sense? I do see the other questions. Yeah.
Yes. So anyway, Jason, I think we've come to the end of our time. For everybody listening here, we are going to send a link where you will be able to rate the thing. At the same time, we can send his contact details. If you have further questions, you can take it up. And also, if Jason's willing to provide his contact details, you could actually continue the dialogue if you want. I guess with that, Jason, we really appreciate you giving your time, making all the adjustments, from New York, and we're sorry about the experiences faced by you, your friends, and all the people over there. But at the same time, thank you for talking so candidly and sharing your views and experiences. I think all of us learn from this, and we've got an amazing number of people over here. I think we reached over 90 people today. Thank you so much.
Tetso Hawassa, thanks.
Yeah.
Tetso College, thanks for having me. I'll send some contact information to you guys soon, and I look forward to hearing from you guys. Best of luck.
All right. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, everybody.
Cheers.